Hello, everyone. My name is Tyler Davis, and I'm presenting my MUSE 600 history presentation on the coevolution of public school bands and band competitions. First, let me provide a little bit of information about myself. Again, my name is Tyler Davis. I currently serve as Associate Director of Bands at Hamilton Southeastern High School, located in Fishers, Indiana, a northeast suburb of Indianapolis. I originally got my undergraduate from Western Illinois University, where I graduated in 2017 with my bachelor's in instrumental music education. A little bit of background on me so you have some context for this presentation. I started playing in public school band in 2006. I played and still play the French horn and took some piano lessons before that. Immediately, I fell in love with band, and I did it enough that I decided I want to become a music educator. But I did all of this without competition. At the time, my alma mater did not participate in any music competitions. There was an occasional showcase, and we would venture outside of our building to watch performances as well as perform for community events, but there was no competition. Small caveat is that program is now competitive, but that happened after my time. As a matter of fact, I attended my very first formal actual band competition when I was on staff with a small band's marching band. So growing up in a non-competitive program, but then witnessing the scope of band competitions, I wanted to know, why are contests so synonymous with band? One cannot walk into any band room without seeing the walls decorated with plaques, trophies, medals, signs, photos, banners, and things reflecting their past competitive successes. And while choir and orchestra rooms do this as well, it seems very connected to band, more so than the other two ensembles. Why is that? How did competition shape the development of public school band programs? It then starts with a brief history of public school band and early competitions. The start of the public school band started with keeping children out of trouble after school and not having them shoot pool afterwards. Much like in The Music Man, school bands are created to mirror the excitement of town bands. Think of a local community band that might play at the 4th of July or other community festivities. These town bands were in turn mirrored after the larger military-style Sousa and Gilmore bands. These bands had flashy uniforms, loud instruments, and created a lot of energy. Schools began taking this model and incorporating them into their schools. It should be said, though, that the MSNC originally did not consider band a worthwhile ensemble receiving credit. That was reserved for singing and orchestra. Almost immediately, band competitions began appearing. Even in the early 1900s, local band contests began appearing, but post-World War I, they started appearing more frequently and a bit more organized. They were local, mostly at the county or state fair level. The state fair was an interesting place for band competitions to develop, and every year at every city state fair there seemed to be one. They were often sponsored by instrument manufacturers. I want to take a quick moment to highlight the Central Indiana Track Show Association. Indiana has one of the most unique state fair band circuits that deserve to be highlighted, in that it takes place on the dirt horse racing track at the Indiana State Fairgrounds in front of the grandstands. Football field yard markers and lines are drawn in chalk onto the dirt, and as they have been since just post-World War II, bands compete within these confines, and an entire league is set up around it. It's a small caveat, but I find it very interesting. The influence of instrument manufacturers in early band competitions cannot be overstated. Most instrument manufacturers made most of their revenue selling instruments directly to the military, for military bands as well as bugle calls. Post-World War I, however, demand for new instruments dropped, and these manufacturers needed to find new markets. This led to the creation of the first national band competition. The first national band competition, called a tournament, was hosted in Chicago in 1923. It was organized by the Band Instrument Manufacturers Association and was also held by C.G. Kahn of Kahn Instruments. 30 bands were there, mostly from the Chicago area and surrounding states. These bands were sent postcards and recruited from directors whose names were on the mailing list for local instrument stores and manufacturers. Students arrived by train and were housed and fed in the Navy barracks at Navy Pier in Chicago. There was one judge, Lieutenant William H. Stalebin, director of the Marine Corps Band. A worthwhile judge, but there was an advertised 3 in the program, and many directors voiced their displeasure. These bands were adjudicated on tone quality, expression, intonation, and precision. There was originally a marching component as well, but this caption was scrapped. However, the bands did march past the judge. After all was said and done, after 2 days of competitions, and some bands dropped out so they could make the last train out, Fostoria High School Band was the victor of this first competition and was awarded $1,000. The event was uncomfortable, rushed, and many directors were dissatisfied with the presence of one judge. However, despite the overwhelmingly negative feedback from the ensembles, the event was considered a success and was slated to happen again. However, the Band Instrument Manufacturers Association realized the limitations and decided to pass off the reins to the MSNC. The Band Instrument Manufacturers Association was aware of the MSNC and felt they could do a better job organizing this contest. The MSNC did implement many reforms, including requiring a repertoire list, refining the judging process, creating a system of regional competitions from which finalists were selected for the national competition. Some indirect impacts were that it led to the standardization of band instrumentation. Many of these first bands in 1923 marched with oboes and bassoons, the popularity of full scores as opposed to piano reductions, and increased emphasis on instrumental training programs and the growth of the school band. The competition ultimately went on for a few years, taking a hiatus during World War II. However, the competition never returned. Post-World War II, band competitions returned in a much more organized but local fashion. At this point of the game, most states had their own music educator association, and many band contests were operated at the state level by these organizations. Some states oversaw them directly, yet some created subsidiaries to manage the contests. Each state did place a different amount of priority on emphasis and on music contests. The 2 states with the most Music for All Bands of America Grand National titles are Indiana and Texas, so it's worthwhile to examine these 2 state positions on how their band contests are managed. In Indiana, the first formal association of the Operation of Music Contest was organized in 1935, and actually 2 were developed based on regional demographics. The first was the Northern Indiana School Band Orchestra and Vocal Association, which creates my all-time favorite acronym, NISBOVA, which, as you can tell, organized and managed contests in the North, and the Indiana School Music Association, or ISMA, which managed competitions in the central and southern parts of the state. The 2 organizations combined in 1981 to create the Indiana State School Music Association, or ISMA. ISMA now organizes all music contests, including concert band, marching band, jazz, show choir, and solo and ensemble. In the case of Texas, the Texas Bandmasters Association was created in 1920 with the express purpose of organizing band competitions. It grew in size and began to include orchestra and choir directors as well. Ultimately, the TBA morphed into the Texas Music Educators Association, or the TMEA. Band contests are now governed by the UIL, or University Interscholastic League, the same organization that monitors sporting activities as well. It should be noted that while the original Texas Bandman Association did morph into the TMEA, the organization has been revitalized and now stands as its own independent organization, but it does support the TMEA. The idea of a national band contest was not lost and returned upon the creation of Marching Bands of America in 1975, which was created as a subsidiary of McCormick Enterprises, a band instrument manufacturer that never seems to go away. It held its first marching band championship in 1976 and got big enough to hold its first regional event in 1978. It separated from McCormick Enterprises in 1984 to become its own independent organization known as Bands of America. Ultimately, Bands of America rebranded itself to Music for All to reflect its commitment to all music, not just marching bands. It then created a subsidiary called Bands of America to manage the marching band branch. Music for All / Bands of America holds its annual marching band Grand National Competition at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana, the single largest marching band event in the country, which draws over 100 bands for 3 days of competition, from preliminaries, semifinals, and finals. Music for All also hosts concert band, jazz band, orchestra, and choral festivals, showcases, and clinics. While not necessarily band, there are other band-adjacent national organizations that are worth mentioning, including Drum Corps International, or DCI, which was founded in 1972 and facilitates the annual DCI Summer Tour. Drum corps being almost like marching bands, but no woodwinds, and operated independently as opposed to with a school. The DCI Summer Tour starts with small regional events at the beginning of the summer and ends with its finals at Lucas Oil Stadium in August. And then there is Winter Guard International, or WGI, which was founded in 1977. It facilitates national color guard, indoor percussion, and indoor winds competitions. They start with smaller regional events early in the season and concludes with national finals in Dayton, Ohio in the spring. All three of these groups, DCI, WGI, and BOA, have a strategic partnership to assure membership and share goals. While it does bring us to current day in the history, there is still controversy surrounding music contests. It was called the most heated debate since the days of the Rote Note Agreement, whether music competitions were good or not. Because despite being mainstays of band life, there was still a lot of controversy around them. The Committee of Instrumental Affairs, which was a branch of the MSNC, voiced that it was uncomfortable holding band contests unless there was expressed educational value, and this had to do with the intrinsic and extrinsic appeal of band music. Many music educators felt that music should be taught for the love of music and music in and of itself, not a trophy. However, competition has truly been a mainstay since the inception of school bands. Competitions played a vital role in legitimizing school band. The MENC originally did not recognize band as part of music education curriculum, and eventually, when it did, in 1912, it was placed at the second to lowest tier of importance, only sitting above Boys' Glee Club. Bands at the time were composed of students with nothing else to do, with instruments they can get their hands on, taught by part-time bandmasters who were teaching to support their performing careers. It was low-quality instruction and low-quality performances. However, when competitions came, bands were forced to improve to gain a competitive advantage. On top of this, school administrators, who wanted to bring a bit of glory and prestige to their school, wanted bands to win competitions. They began allocating more resources to the school bands and made band a credit-earning class. Perhaps most importantly, it made the band director a full-time teacher, not an adjunct instructor. This directly led to the creation of band director education programs at universities. A further way competitions helped legitimize the band was through repertoire lists. In the 19th century, band repertoire was incredibly limited, being mostly marches and transcriptions of orchestral works and overtures. And seen in our book, marches, waltzes, two-steps, smears, and ragtimes, I want to know what a smear is, played badly but enthusiastically by a dozen boys, represented school band music. However, post the 1923 band tournament, the MENC began creating a standard repertoire list. This list upheld standards and forced bands to choose music of sufficient substance and value. Band directors could no longer choose easy music to get better scores. A lot of credit to this process also goes to Frederick Fennell, the founder of the Eastman Wind Band. He had a passion for legitimizing and popularizing the wind band and commissioned dozens of pieces by then contemporary composers, such as Gustav Holst, Percy Grainger, Ralph Vaughan Williams, and many more. While he was not alone in this, he legitimized the wind band as more than a school activity, but as a medium for quality music. And of course, you have to talk about the educational aspect. Every single organization that supports music contests has explicitly in the mission statement that education is at the fore of everything. ISMA states, and I apologize for reading directly off the slide, the mission of the Indiana State School Music Association, Incorporated, is to provide educationally evaluated music performance opportunities for the students and teachers of school music ensembles from their member schools in Indiana, to assist in the development of performance-oriented assessment of standards of music education, to promote the inclusion of music ensembles as part of each school's core curriculum, and to offer educational support to fulfill this mission. The UIL, the governing body of Texas Music, says that the University Interscholastic League exists to provide educational, extracurricular, academic, athletic, and music contests. Remember, the UIL oversees athletics as well. Finally, Music for All, which has Bands America, says that Music for All's mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music. There's something to be said about the extrinsic motivation of wanting to win being a motivator for students to want to learn their music and improve on it. How could a band win if they don't perform the best? This on its surface absolutely does lead to an educational aspect of it. However, many educators still do have problems with this approach. For better or for worse, though, American wind bands and competitions are forever intertwined. Since the beginning, one influenced the other.